Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves that we receive, and in dying that we're born to eternal life. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves that we receive, and in dying that we'll burn to eternal life. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned.
Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me so love. Where there is injury, let me so pardon. Where there is doubt, let there be faith. Where there's despair, let me sow hope. Where there is darkness, let there be light. Where there is sadness, joy. Oh, divine Master, grant that I may never seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life, to eternal
CHATS at Bonum. Previously on FRIARSIDE CHATS, we were enlightened on the true meaning of prayer and devotion. Prayer being our way of reaching out to God, feeling His presence, listening to His words, and living it out in our daily life. It is not limited to the prayer room or the church, but in every action we take. Devotion, on the other hand, is having an intimate relationship with God, which leads to our total self-giving to our giver. In last week's episode, we concluded with this reflection question: how does my relationship with God influence my prayer life? Let us listen to the sharing of Conchitina Bernardo for this reflection question.
Good afternoon. My name is Conchitina Bernardo. I belong to the Contemplative Outreach Philippines. I work in its circle of service. I firstly apologize for the turban. It is because I haven't been out since March 14 and my hair is in disarray. I apologize for having to read whatever it is I'm sharing. It is because I cannot speak extemporaneously. I was asked today to share with you how my relationship with God influences my prayer life. I would like to thank Father Robert Manansala for his talk last week on prayer and devotion. It was an affirmation of a prayer life, my prayer life. I practice a discipline. Yes, it is a discipline because I have to make it a point to pray in silence every day upon waking up and once more late afternoon. This is the discipline of centering prayer. Daily, I try, but I can only try. Father Robert says, praying without prayers is good, because in our case, it is the prayer of silence, contemplative prayer. I sit 20 to 30 minutes a day and try, or every session, not a day, but maybe twice a day if I can, and try to quiet my mind with a prayer word. Silence I need. My soul yearns for silence. I pray in a room, just God and me, in this little room. It isn't large, it's actually small, but then daily I encounter Him. I encounter Him when I read the Gospel, the written word. Sometimes I can take in a first reading, and if it's there, I take in a second reading. But always the Gospel of the day has a word or a phrase that jumps at me. And I realize that I am being told something. And always it is in the context of everyday life. Father Robert says that it's in daily happenings, in everyday happenings, that we encounter the Lord. For me, it's very simple. it's tending to a person I love that has been ill. It could be cooking a meal. It could be tidying up. It could be painting a canvas. It could be teaching a household help how to do things right and encouraging her, and then also congratulating her if she does things correctly. I would like to touch on the topic of spiritual apartheid. Father Robert spoke of this. I had never heard it before. I guess this is born out of the racial apartheid of South Africa. It merely states that we have preconceived notions, old notions, like black is less than white, which is racial, or that God is out there. He stressed many times that God is not out there, He is within us. He also said that prayer leads to devotion and devotion to action. My time is very limited. I only have 5 minutes. I could really enumerate the number of persons I touch in my centering prayer group here at the parish that are very involved with disabled children, with the elderly, with inmates in the prison, with myriads of things that they do for others born out of the prayer. I would like to end this with a video of compilation of 2 siblings, Billy Suntay and Robert, of a place where centering prayer was born. You can say it was born, but it's always been there. Contemplative prayer has always been there. This is Snowmass, Colorado. And it ties in very well with the last point of Father Robert. He says God is in nature. For me, this is true. I think born out of the prayer, I see God everywhere, but particularly in nature. I see Him in the green forests of Baguio, in the beautiful flowers. I hear Him in the chirping of the birds. I taste Him in the salty sea breeze. I smell Him in the newly cut grass. And most of all, I feel Him when my granddaughter touches me. I end my sharing, and I hope the video will find some nook in this whatever it is you might call this, a reaction or just an affirmation of why I have in fact chosen centering prayer as my mode of prayer. Thank you very much, Father Robert. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Conchitina, for sharing with us your reflection. Today, we will get to know more about the Franciscan order. Have you ever wondered why the Franciscans occupy the popular imagination of Filipinos, even though they were only second to the Augustinians to arrive in the Philippines? It's probably because of the book Noli Me Tangere. Rizal may have wanted to portray the Philippines as the daughter of 2 cultures. Padre Damaso, a Spanish Franciscan friar, as the father, and Maria Clara, a Filipina, as the mother. The heroine, Maria Clara, could have been a representation of Saint Clare of Assisi. Look at the dress she is wearing. Doesn't it resemble the brown habit with a hood that our friars wear? Who would have thought of that? Now, let us progress through history and find out how the Franciscans found their way to the Philippines. Watch this.
They dared the open seas and patiently bore the brunt of the angry waves. Hungry, thirsty, over fatigue, their bodies were weak, but not their spirit. The journey was long and dangerous, yet they continued sailing on, powered only by one desire: to bring the good news of Christ to the people of the Philippines. The year was 1521. The first Spanish missionaries planted the cross of Christ on Philippine soil. The Franciscans arrived in Manila on July 2, 1578. Upon their arrival, the first batch of 15 friars was temporarily housed in the Agustinian convent in Intramuros. Then, the brothers finally moved to their own residence on August 1st of the same year. The next day, they inaugurated their church and placed it under the protection of Our Lady of the Angels. After a few months of preparation and study of the language, they set off for the evangelization of the archipelago.
In Manila, they founded Santa Ana de Sapa, Paco, Pandacan, Sampaloc, and San Francisco del Monte. With the arrival of more friars, the province of St. Gregory the Great was finally established on November 15, 1586. In the ensuing years, the Spanish Franciscans labored energetically in many places in the country. Since their arrival until the end of the Spanish rule in 1898, the Franciscans were able to establish or administer more than 200 towns and parishes in the following areas: Manila, Bulacan, Rizal, Laguna, Quezon Province, Isabela, Cavite, Batangas, Bataan, La Union, Ilocos Sur, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, Albay, Sorsogon, Burias Island, Marinduque, Mindoro, Samar, Leyte, and Nueva Ecija. Aside from the founding of towns and parishes, the Franciscans also dedicated themselves to the establishment of institutions of charity such as San Juan de Dios Hospital in 1580, Naga Hospital of San Diego in 1586, Hospital of the Holy Waters in Los Baños 1592, and San Lazaro Hospital, the first leprosarium in the Far East in 1580. The Franciscans also excelled in the field of languages. Fray Pedro de San Buenaventura composed the first Spanish-Tagalog dictionary, the Vocabulario de la Lengua Tagala, that was published in Pila, Laguna in 1613. The Bicolano Spanish Dictionary, printed in 1745, was authored by Fray Marcos Lisboa. The authorship of the first book printed in the Philippines in 1593, the Doctrina Cristiana, was attributed to Fray Juan de Plasencia. Fray Juan de Oliver wrote the first catechism on the Ten Commandments in Tagalog. The first water system in Manila, the free loan banks, the Montes de Piedad, were established through the efforts of Fray Felix Huerta. They were also involved in the building of infrastructures such as roads, dams, and bridges. Some Franciscans became bishops. Among them were Ignacio de Santibáñez, first Archbishop of Manila, Luis Maldonado, the first Bishop of Nueva Cáceres in Naga, and Martin Maria Alcocer, the last Spanish Bishop of Cebu. By the year 1896, there were 275 Franciscans in the Philippines administering over 100 parishes and mission areas. However, at the end of the Spanish rule in 1898, many friars departed. By 1900s, there were only 70 friars left. In 1905, the seat of the administration of the province was transferred to Madrid, Spain. What was left was a provincial commissariat established to oversee the remaining ministries of the Spanish friars. On July 16, 1931, a seminary was opened in San Francisco del Monte, Quezon City, for Filipino candidates. In 1948, only 23 Spanish Franciscans remained in the Philippines. In 1951, the Italian Franciscans from the province of St. Anthony in Venice, Italy, opened a mission in Cagayan Valley. These were mostly composed of the friars expelled from China during the communist takeover. In 1952, American friars from the province of the Assumption of Pulaski arrived and took over some parishes in Samar upon the invitation of the Bishop of Calbayog. In 1956, another group of friars from the province of Santa Barbara, California, USA, came to work in the Diocese of Dumaguete. In the same year, another batch of American friars from the province of St. John the Baptist in Cincinnati, Ohio, established their presence in Leyte and Biliran Island. In 1962, the Our Lady of the Angels Seminary was founded. OLAS was built through the joint efforts of the foundations, the Spanish, the Italian, and the American foundations. And one of its objectives was to develop the native Franciscan vocation and eventually establish an indigenous Franciscan presence in the country. The increasing number of Filipino friars and the decision of other members of the foundations to work in the country led to the erection of the Vicariate of San Gregorio Magno on March 25, 1970. 13 years later, on January 25, 1983, the province of San Pedro Bautista in the Philippines was inaugurated.
Bago nagkaroon tayo ng Vicariate at saka probinsya, ang mga Franciscano dito sa Pilipinas ay binubuo ng halos 5 na mga different entities ng kanya-kanyang loyalty and allegiance ay sa kanilang mga mother provinces. Yun yung talagang napakalaking biyaya na dala-dala natin pasasalamat ang pagkakaisa natin mula sa 5 entity na magkakaiba.
And the growth has been steady. And I think that is a great event that we celebrate to give thanks to the Lord for the growth of the Franciscan fraternity here in the Philippines. I mean, the fact that we were able to make it, smoothly, without trauma, without, like we have seen in other congregations or other orders who were not able to, to mix together. They separated the Spanish group, the Filipino group. In our case, the Franciscans, we were able to do it. Americans, Italians, Spanish, Filipinos, we were able to make it. So,
tingin ko naman ay malayo na rin ang ating darating. On the one hand, alam natin na ang ating formation ay ngayon ay talagang kaisa-isa dito sa Asia, no? Medyo talagang we are place of exposure dahil ang paghuhubog sa atin ay sa konteksto at kapiling kaysa ng mga dukha. Lamang ang kulang parang talaga sa atin ay isang talagang masigasig na programa at lugar kung saan talaga itong ating pagmamahal sa mga dukha ay ating pang napapalalim at mapakayag. Yun yung kadahilanan kung bakit ang mga pinungan na talaga natin ngayon at tinanggap ng mga parokya at ministry ay sa gitna ng mga dukha. Andyan yung Caloocan, Dagat-Dagatan, andyan yung sa Fairview ng Tagapagtanggol, at maging itong dalawa na bago nating parishes tulad ng Donsol at saka Quezon Nueva Vizcaya ay talagang mga lugar talaga ng mga dukha. Pero yung sa Palanan, alam natin talagang wala naman sigurong gustong kumuha nun dahil sa inaccessibility ng nasabing lugar. And for that reason, I think tayong dapat na naroon. Yun yung mga expression ng ating mga option for the poor.
for me, the great somehow events are the formulation of the charism, vision, mission. That is a big thing. It still is with us. It has shaped our province. And then the second event is the decision to send missionaries.
The province is a young province, no? Yes, still, even if I can say that the results are very positive, still, we, almost probably, this is only my perception, we are still looking for a real identity where really to focus our major attention.
Maganda yung salitang panganganak dahil ang relasyon talaga natin dapat sa Southern Entity ay pagiging isang ina. Yung patuloy at natutuwa na lumalaki ang kanyang anak. At ang kaligayahan na lamang niya ay nakita niya siya'y naging bahagi ng paglaki ng entity na ito. So ito yung talagang malaki ding biyaya na dapat nating ipasalamat sa Diyos, yung biyaya ng pagkakaisa ng limang entity, at lalo ang biyaya ng pagkakaroon ng isang supling upang ma-duplicate pa ang ating pagmamahal sa mga dukha at pagbabahagi ng mabuting balita.
Today, the two entities of the Franciscan Order in the Philippines, the San Pedro Bautista Province and the newly established Custody of St. Anthony in the South, are ministering in different parts of the country. In Luzon, they are in Santa Ana, Casambalangan, and Santa Teresita in Cagayan Valley. Santuario de San Pedro Bautista in Frisco, Quezon City, Our Lady of the Angel Seminary in Novaliches, Our Lady of the Abandoned Parish Santa Ana, Manila, St. Anthony's Shrine in Sampaloc, Manila, Santuario de San Antonio Parish in Forbes Park, Makati, Juan de Plasencia Novitiate in Liliw, Laguna, at St. Francis Friary, Dagat-Dagata, Navotas, Manila, at San Jose, Tagapagtanggol Parish in Quezon City, in the urban poor communities of the post-novitiate friars in Talayan Riverside and Kamuning, both in Quezon City, the Poor Clare Monastery Chaplaincy in Katipunan, Cubao, Quezon City. In the Visayas, they are in St. Francis School, Ale Northern Samar, Christ the King College, Calbayog City, Tukdao and Kawayan, Biliran Province, Palo, Leyte, San Vicente Ferrer Parish and St. Francis Custodial House in Cebu City, Franciscan Retreat Center in Minglanilla, Cebu, St. Francis College in Gihulngan, Negros Oriental, and La Libertad and Dumaguete City. And in Mindanao, they are in Baloy, Lanao del Norte, Kidapawan City, North Cotabato, Josefina, Zamboanga del Sur, and Luoc, Lamitan, Basilan Province. The friars are also involved in the other special ministries such as the Media Apostolate, Justice and Peace and Ecological Initiatives, the Tri-People Muslim Christian Lumad Dialogue in Mindanao. And finally, there are also friars of both the province and the custody who are working as missionaries in Sudan and Libya in Africa, Papua New Guinea, Japan, China, Taiwan, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Spain, Italy, and in the United States of America. After more than 4 centuries since the seed of the Franciscan Order was first planted here in the Philippines, and 25 years since it became a full-fledged Filipino province, the Franciscan presence continues to flourish and bear fruit, especially with the founding of the new custody of St. Anthony in the South and our recently opened missions overseas. We can only hope and pray that our founder, our Holy Father, St. Francis of Assisi, will keep on guiding us in all our endeavors through our ministries and labors of love and service in the Church, and especially among our excluded and less fortunate brothers and sisters. May God give us peace.
video we just watched, some historical places and events were mentioned that led to the creation of Santuario de San Antonio Parish. Let me walk you through this. The Franciscans arrived in the Philippines in July 1578. Father Blas de la Madre de Dios, the provincial father of the Philippine Franciscan Mission, built the first church, Our Lady of Loreto Church in Sampaloc, Manila, in 1613. A convent which served as the first home of the Second Order, the Congregation of the Poor Clares, led by Mother Jeronima de la Asuncion, was built near the church in 1621, before they moved to Intramuros later that year. The Franciscans then found a new home in the eastern part of Intramuros, Manila, where the Franciscan-owned complex was set up. It originally had two churches, the San Francisco Church, which was run by the main order, and the Chapel of the Venerable Third Order, which was run by the Franciscan Third Order. Both were destroyed in the Battle of Manila at the end of World War II, which left the area in a devastated state. The former site of the Franciscan Church is now occupied by the Mapua Institute of Technology. As a result, the First Order relocated to San Francisco del Monte, Quezon City, where now stands the Santuario de San Pedro Bautista, which is under the administration of the Order of Friars Minor of the province of San Pedro Bautista in the Philippines. The church is dedicated to its founder, Father Pedro Bautista, OFM, a Spanish missionary from Avila, Spain, one of the 26 Christians martyred in Japan in 1597. He was canonized a saint in 1862. He came to the Philippines and built a hospital in Los Baños, discovered pansol, taught music, and introduced embroidered barong, among others. The Third Order, on the other hand, relocated to Sampaloc, Manila, currently known as St. Anthony of Padua Shrine. It is still being administered by the Venerable Third Order of the Franciscans. It is located adjacent to the Lady of Loreto Archdiocesan Shrine. With the destruction of the churches, the Franciscan Order wanted to build a new church dedicated to St. Anthony of Padua. The perfect opportunity came in July 1951, when Ayala Corporation donated 2 hectares of land to the Franciscans for the construction of a church to serve as the spiritual successor to the old San Francisco Church. Then Manila Archbishop Gabriel Reyes approved that the church be dedicated to St. Anthony de Padua, whose image was transferred from the original church in Manila to the courtyard of Santuario de San Antonio in Forbes Park, Makati. The statue was the lone survivor of the ravages of the war. After 2 years, Santuario de San Antonio was blessed and operated until it became a parish in 1975, catering to the residents of nearby villages such as Urdaneta, Forbes Park, and Dasmariñas. Benediction was performed in a church while it was still under construction. This was Santuario de San Antonio in 1954. Just a little trivia. It is said that the Franciscans were originally offered 7 hectares, which spanned from where it is now up to EDSA. Aside from the church, the Ayala family wanted the Franciscans to set up a school, but they turned down the offer because the Spanish friars felt that their charism wasn't in education, but rather in being with the poor, taking care of the lepers, for example. A portion of the land was then offered to the Agustinians, leading to the existence of Colegio de San Agustin inside Dasmariñas village. Earlier, I mentioned 3 Franciscan orders, the First, Second, and Third Orders. Let me tell you more about them. The First Order Franciscans are the Order of Friars Minor, or OFM. It is comprised of priests who have sworn to lead a life of prayer, preaching, and penance. Though there have been several spin-offs in the past due to their varying views on living a life of poverty, 3 independent branches remain. First, the Order of Friars Minor, whose focus is on mission. They are also known in the order as the Spirituals. It is comprised of renewal groups who adopt to the changing times. They wear a brown habit with a hood, which is detachable. Our friars here at SSAP belong to this branch. Second, the OFM Capuchin, whose focus is on prayer and contemplation. They maintain a primitive charism. Those who belong to this branch wear a brown habit with a hood that is connected to the overall garment. This is the order that Padre Pio belongs to. And third, the OFM Conventual, whose focus is on community life. Those who belong to this branch wear a gray habit with a hood. Have you ever wondered why the Franciscan habit is brown and why they wear a white cord as a belt? The solid earthly tone signifies humility, and the white cord signifies purity. The three knots on the cord represent the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. The second order are the Order of Saint Clare, or more commonly known as the Poor Clares, comprised of religious sisters. Many of you have probably at one time or another offered eggs to the nuns at St. Clare in Quezon City. That's them. Third Order Franciscans are the Order of Franciscan Seculares, or OFS, which also has two branches. The OFS is comprised of men and women who try to live the ideals of the Franciscan order in their daily lives outside of religious institutes. We have our own group who belong to this order here at SSAP. The other branch is the Third Order Regular. They live in religious communities under traditional religious vows. They stress on the penitential aspect, life of ongoing conversion, and pilgrimage. While there may be different Franciscan orders and different branches under each order, they all share in the same mission of caring for the poor and the sick. Here are some establishments which were started by the Franciscans in the Philippines. Hospital de San Juan de Dios. The oldest hospital in the Philippines was built when the Franciscan missionaries arrived in the country in 1578. The Franciscans also managed the San Lazaro Leprosarium in Manila. The San Lazaro parish was built within the hospital premises, and the choir loft used to be where the lepers would appear to attend the masses so as not to infect the priests. The Franciscans also managed Monte de Piedad Savings and Mortgage Bank, located in Plaza Goiti in Santa Cruz, Manila. This was funded by the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Manila and established by Spanish Franciscan friar Felix Huerta. It was considered the Philippines' first savings bank, which was started as a workers' cooperative to service the poor and to avoid usury. Franciscan friar Felix Huerta was also the proponent of Manila's first water system, the Carriedo Water Works, named after the man who had conceived of and funded the system, Francisco Carriedo y Peredo. The Carriedo fountain was built in May 1882 and was first located at the Rotonda de Sampaloc, the intersection between Legarda, Lacson, and Magsaysay streets, which today forms the Nagtahan interchange. It was transferred to the Balara Filters Park in Arroceros, Manila in the late 1970s. It was again moved in the 1990s to its current location at Plaza Santa Cruz in front of the Santa Cruz Church. Well, there are so many interesting stories on the history of the Franciscans in the Philippines and about the Franciscans themselves. It would be more fascinating to listen to real-life stories from our guest for today, Father Jesus Galindo, OFM, in today's episode entitled His Life, His Story. Let me turn you over to our two moderators, Len Hizon and Dennis Montecillo, co-heads of the Education and Formation Ministry at SSAP.
Hello, Father Jesus. Welcome to our series of Fireside Chats, and it's a privilege and an honor to have you here. Thank you very much, Father.
Thank you. Father Jesus Galindo has been a Franciscan for 57 years. He first came to the Philippines in 1962 and spent 26 years at the Makati Medical Center and has spent the last 18 here at Santuario San Antonio. Welcome, Father Jesus.
Thank you. So, Father, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, what brought you to the Philippines, and as a Franciscan, actually.
So I was born in Segovia, province of Spain, in October 12, 1940. Yeah.
Tell us about your childhood, Father Jesus. Was it a big family? Was everybody go to church all the time? Tell us about the environment growing up as a young boy.
So I was born and raised in a humble family, a simple family, poor family. So the childhood was marked by simplicity and poverty. Yeah, that is how my parents lived a poor life.
And were you one of many children, or were you the only child?
Well, I was the youngest of the 5 children. Though we were 10 born, but 5 died. Babies. Yeah, only 5 of us were able to grow up
And survive, yes, Father. So, Father, can you tell us a little bit, a little story about what brought you, what drew you, or what attracted you to the Franciscan life?
I really wanted to become a priest, not necessarily Franciscan. In my hometown, there is a small community of Franciscan, but I did not have any contact with them. So, for all practical purposes, I did not know anything about the Franciscans. I wanted to become a priest. I have an elder brother who became a priest. My father had a cousin who is a priest. My mother had an uncle who is a priest. So it's a priest family. So I really wanted to become a priest. I tried to go into the Jesuits, but they did not accept me. So the cousin of my father, who is the organist in Segovia, in the cathedral, was a friend of the superior of the guardian in the community of Segovia. So he went to talk to him and said, my cousin has a son who wants to become a priest, but they cannot support his study because they are poor. So the guardian in Segovia, in the community, I tell them to bring him to our community, bring him to the Franciscans. The studies are for free. So that is how I became engaged in the Franciscan life.
How old were you at that time, Father Jesus?
How old?
Yes.
So at that time, I was, when I entered the seminary, I was 13 years old.
Wow, that was very young. Very, very young, Father.
Yeah.
You must have been very sure of your calling. You must have been very certain that this was the life that you were being asked to live.
And after your ordination, Father, did you spend any time in Spain as a friar, or did you get sent overseas immediately?
No, after ordination, I was sent to. I was ordained in the first of all. I was ordained here in the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
In Sariaya. And so right after ordination, I was sent to the seminary in Novaliches to teach. I was teaching in the seminary for 10 years. And then I was assigned to be parish priest in Santa Ana, Manila. I was there 16 years.
After you were a parish priest?
In Makati Medical, I was there after being in the parish, after being in Santa Ana. I went to Makati Medical Center through the influence, so to say, of the intercession of Father Dave Turnbull. He was, maybe some of you know him, he was assigned here in Forbes. And he asked me to take over when the days that he is free. So that is how I started going to Makati Medical Center.
And how different a life was that for you, Father Jesus, as a chaplain versus as a parish priest? Was that a very different life for you?
Well, actually, the work is very similar, taking care of people, spiritual needs of the people. It is good. I enjoyed life in the hospital, just like I had enjoyed life in the parish. It's basically the same. Ministerial work, pastoral work, attending to the spiritual needs of the people. So it's no great difference.
So Father Jesus, you must really know a lot of information about the history of the Franciscans in the Philippines, having lived most of your priestly life here in the Philippines.
The Franciscans in the Philippines?
Yes, Father.
I am not really a historian myself. Some of my classmates are historians. I have 2 or 3 of them. So I'm not really an expert in history. I may have some data, but and not really an expert in the history of the Franciscans.
But do you know?
Like what, for instance, what in particular would you like to know?
I think, first of all, I mean, our understanding is that the Franciscans first came to the Philippines in 1521. And we're wondering, and I'm sure that many of our viewers will be wondering, what was the initial mission of the Franciscans when they first arrived in the Philippines?
So the Franciscans came to the Philippines in 1521.
That's right, yes, Father.
I thought he was...
or maybe I was mistaken.
In 1578,
maybe.
80.
1580?
1580.
The Franciscans were the second group to come to the Philippines, second group of foreign friars. The first group were the Augustinians.
Okay.
The Augustinians were the ones who came in 1521.
Oh,
I see.
okay.
I see.
The Franciscans, when they came, they took his shelter in the convent of the Augustinians in Intramuros.
I see. I see.
Wow.
So the Franciscans did not have a convent of their own. They stayed in the convent of the Augustinians.
Father, before this interview took place, our viewers had an opportunity to watch a short video about the Franciscans in the Philippines. In fact, you were featured as one of the friars interviewed in that video. I remember one thing that stood out in their interview with you is there was a lot of mention made of the creation of the province of San Pedro Bautista, and how in doing that they combined 5 different other areas in the Philippines. What was the significance of the creation of that province? It seemed like it was a big deal. And for those of us who are not Franciscans, it's not entirely clear to us why that was important. Do you remember, or what did that do for you as a member of the Franciscan order in the Philippines?
Yeah. So the creation of the province of San Pedro Bautista, before we depend on 5 different superiors, 3 Americans, 1 Italian, and 1 Spanish. I remember when we were in the seminary in Novaliches, the masters or the clerics of the students, they used to complain because they had to ask permission from too many superiors, 5 of them. So the creation of the province was a great, before the province was formed, we had to go to the superiors from Spain, 3 from America, 1 from Italy, 1 from Spain, in order to, for instance, to request permission for ordinations to ordain the seminarians. So when the province was formed, then we had authority here in the Philippines to make decisions.
Yes.
And to have the ordinations and other decisions taken here without going to Spain or to America or to Italy or to anybody else. So that was a great advantage, in our life.
I imagine that the order grew much more quickly once you created the province of San Pedro Bautista. It was easier to attract people, more and more friars into the order because of that.
Yeah. And what was particularly useful in the case of the Franciscans, when the province was created, there was no, like other orders, like the Augustinians, they had a similar process of the local friars getting together and united with the foreigners.
Yes.
They had a lot of problems. They had many problems. To get together foreign friars and local friars. In our case, in the Franciscans, we have no problem really. We were able to get along, the Filipinos and the foreigners fairly well. And much of the help came from the seminary. We were formed together in the seminary in Novaliches. Like I myself, I studied in Novaliches for 5 years. And I grew up with Filipino friars, Filipino Franciscans, and there was no crisis, no difficulty between the Filipinos and the foreigners. In other orders, they did not have this situation, this process. So they went through a different crisis, like the superiors were local friars, Filipino friars. So the history of the union of the local Franciscans with the foreigners.
Yes, Father. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about that too.
1962, the seminary of Novaliches was established, and that is the reason why I was sent to the Philippines together with 5 other companions in order to add to the number of seminarians, because there were no theologians, no seminarians or theologians. So they sent 6 of us, Spanish clerics, Spanish friars, to add to the number. So the reason for my coming to the Philippines was precisely that, to add to the number of Filipino friars, theologian, in 1962.
So, Father Jesus, when you were asked to come to the Philippines, you left your family back in Spain.
So we were asked, we wanted to come to the Philippines. We were consulted, and we were chosen. There were others who wanted to come, but they were not chosen. Some of my classmates were crying because they were not sent to the Philippines. So we were considered somehow lucky, fortunate to be sent to the Philippines, because we were very much interested to come to the Philippines. Already from years back, when we were in the minor seminary, Franciscan missionaries used to come for vacation from the Philippines, and they used to tell us stories about the mission. They used to tell us stories about Samar, about Leyte, about the flora and fauna of these places. So we were already interested in seeing the visiting the Philippines. So when they told to us about that possibility of being sent to the Philippines, we were so happy.
It must have been a struggle for your family, because they knew that you were leaving them.
Well, no, in my case at least, there was no problem. Already from early childhood, my parents, they asked me what I wanted to be. And already from early childhood, I told them I want to travel. I want to travel.
Yes.
I want to see places. I want to see places. So when I was given this opportunity, the chance to come to the Philippines, my parents told me, now you are going to have the chance, the opportunity to see places.
Yes. Yes.
So it was a dream, somehow, a dream fulfilled. There was no problem. I have no opposition, no obstacle for many of my relatives coming to the Philippines.
But Father, you said that you have an older brother who is also a priest.
Yes, my elder brother was a diocesan priest.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
So can you help us understand, ourselves and the viewers a little bit, what is the difference between a diocesan priest and a Franciscan friar?
As a Franciscan, you are held by the rule of Saint Francis, the lifestyle of Saint Francis, the diocesan clergy, the diocesan priests, they depend from the bishop. They do not have these duties arising from the Franciscan way of life. The diocesan clergy, they do not have the vows like we have the religious have. The Franciscans, we are religious, and therefore we have the vows, the three vows: obedience, chastity, and poverty.
Father Jesus, you were saying, you mentioned the statement, the Franciscan way of life. Can you help us understand or describe a little bit what is the Franciscan way of life?
The Franciscan way of life is marked by the rule of Saint Francis, the spirituality of Saint Francis, the writings of Saint Francis. Yeah. So we are particularly oriented by this life of poverty, obedience, and chastity, the three vows. The Franciscan way of life is marked by simplicity, by poverty, yes, obedience. In other words, we depend on the guardians, the provincials, the superiors. We are not free to move around. The diocesan clergy, they depend on the bishop. They do not have the community life like we do. They do not have the vows, the three vows. So an entirely different setup, an entirely different way of life.
Father Jesus, can I go back to your time when you were at Makati Medical Center?
Mm-hmm.
You had said that the life there compared to your life here in Santuario was essentially the same, tending to the spiritual needs of the people you serve. But it seems to me that when you're a chaplain at a hospital, as an outsider, it seems different because as a chaplain, you are constantly comforting people who are suffering or who are relatives of people who are suffering. And it seems to me that that's maybe not the same as here at Santuario, where of course there are people who suffer, but there are also baptisms, there are marriages, there are daily masses. Am I over-dramatizing your chaplaincy that, that it seemed like your life might have been filled with having to comfort people in pain and suffering all the time?
Yeah. So it's, I was trying to point out, the ministerial work is basically the same. It's mostly sacramental.
I see.
Mostly sacramental. Yeah. The way of life, of course, is very different to live in the hospital and to live in the parish. It's very different.
Was it more stressful for you? Was it more stressful having to, be meeting with people who are suffering all the time? As a person, were you more exhausted at the end of the day than normal when you were at the hospital?
This is one thing that I have found always in the parish or in the hospital, wherever I have been assigned, I had no problem, no problem in getting along with the other friars. we are the members of the community. I have been uh, blessed with that kind of the ability and the facility to get along with the friars. So for me, to be in the hospital, to be in the parish has not been excessively trying, testing. I found I enjoyed life in the parish. I enjoyed life in the hospital also.
It sounds like maybe your community is what you fell back on to give you comfort.
Also,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. Something a diocesan priest would have a heart. Somebody from the diocese, a regular diocesan priest, does not have the community that he can fall back on during those difficult times.
Yes, that is true.
Well, Father, we were talking about the community of Santuario de San Antonio. And so we are wondering, and I'm sure that many of our viewers are also wondering, how the community of Santuario de San Antonio began as a parish.
San Antonio was built as a church, a parish. Then it was transformed, or it was turned into a parish in 1975.
So that's very interesting information. I don't think any of us really knew that, Dennis, right? That it was meant to be a diocesan.
And yeah, what happened? What happened, Father Jesus? How did it end up a Franciscan, a parish under the care of the Franciscans?
It was offered by the Ayalas, as far as I know. It was offered to the Ayalas land, properties. So they were offered by the Ayalas to the Franciscans.
No.
In fact, some say it was offered first to the Augustinians.
Ah.
Very interesting.
But it was given to the Franciscans. So that is how it became a Franciscan enclave.
So what you're saying, Father, is that in the mid-1960s, the land was given, but it only became a parish in 1975.
Yes, but when I came to the Philippines, the church was already built.
Ah, okay.
The church was already built. I came in 1962. The church was built in 1954-55.
Wow. That's amazing, isn't it, Dennis? I think that's really information that many of our viewers will be interested in knowing. It's good trivia.
It's good trivia, yeah. Father Jesus, do you follow Pope Francis very much?
It was a great surprise when he chose the name.
Yes.
At the very beginning, we were asking which Francis is he taking as a name?
Yes.
Francis Xavier.
Yes.
Francis Assisi.
Yeah.
And then it became, little by little, became clear that it was Francis of Assisi. And that Pope Francis really loves Saint Francis of Assisi. And he has adopted his kind of lifestyle.
Yes.
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 Lifestyle.
Yes. Yes. Now, Father Jesus, would you also know, I've always had this question in my mind, I wanted to ask, do you know why it is that Franciscans seem to have a special place in the Holy Land? Both Len and I have been to the Holy Land, and it became very clear to us that above all orders in the Catholic Church, Franciscans have a very special place. Why is that?
Yes. Well, connection of the Franciscans with the Holy Land has to do with the visit of Saint Francis of Assisi to the place and to the king, chieftain of the Muslims. That visit created a very, very positive relationship between the Muslims and the Franciscans. The Franciscans were given permission to build churches and convents there in the Holy Land. So from that time on, the Franciscans were allowed to stay in the place. Then later the popes themselves, they gave this permission to the Franciscans to stay in the Holy Land. So the very beginning of the relationship, the close ties of the Franciscans with the Holy Land has to do with the visit of Francis to the place.
I see. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, Father Jesus, this has been very, very illuminating. We are quite privileged to have you as our guest this evening. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your insights. It was lovely to hear about your early life. Yes.
Thank you very, very much.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father Jesus, Len, and Dennis, for taking us through history. It was interesting to discover that the Franciscans were the second ones to come to the Philippines in 1578, and were only second to the Augustinians who came in 1521, and that the Spanish priests wanted to be sent to the Philippines because of the stories they had heard about our flora and fauna. Father Jesus was blessed to have been chosen, and we are all blessed to have had him here with us for the past 18 years. At this point, we would like to turn to you, our viewers. What have you taken away from this session? What is it about the Franciscan order that puts them in a unique position to evangelize to Filipinos? Please take a few moments to write down this question and reflect on the answer. Next week, we will start our session with a sharer and also get to know our next friar. Thank you for joining us in today's Friarside Chats. See you in next week's episode entitled Stewardship, a Way of Life.
Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, let me sow pardon. Where there is doubt, let there be faith. Where there's despair, let me sow hope. Where there is darkness, let there be light. Where there is sadness, joy. Oh, divine Master, grant that I may never seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is